NBC News Justice reporter Ryan Riley joins me now with more. And Ryan, this had been the initial belief of many people about January 6th early on, that there were calls from inside the house, if you will, in law enforcement. But D.C. Metro, wow.
Yeah, it's really quite extraordinary. And, this lieutenant was in a position, in an intelligence position in which he was, there was sort of a reason for him to have been in communication with Enrique Tarrio ahead of this. He was sort of in charge of making sure that assets were in place when they came into town to sort of, quelling, basically getting violence reduced and trying to keep Antifa separated from the Proud Boys when they were in town. But this relationship, just really went too close that we see in these text messages, and especially tipping him off about his arrest that was pending when he was actually arrived in D.C. He's told about that. Enrique Tarrio was told about that while he was on the plane, and this was an investigation that he was sort of updated against. And in fact, the lieutenant here was basically working against this investigation, which all dated back to this incident in December 2020, which involved the burning of a Black Lives Matter banner that was hanging up outside of a church that the Proud Boys had ripped down and burned. So that was something that he was eventually arrested for, and that was sort of the FBI's way of trying to stop, basically, sort of cut off the snake at the head, essentially. Obviously, that didn't work with the Proud Boys, who then went on and stormed the Capitol, despite the fact that Enrique Tarrio was sort of taken off the battlefield to a certain effect here. He would actually spent January 6th, of course, in a Baltimore hotel and wasn't on the grounds of the Capitol that day.
I'm curious here. So you're implying, so that Lamond was supposed to reach out to Tarrio at times to deal with whenever Proud Boys were doing their own forms of protests, or was some of this contact considered legitimate part of his job?
That's going to be the complicating thing here, because he was communicating about these communications with Tarrio to other people in his chain of command. He was this came out in the Proud Boys trial, that he was sending information and saying, a guy on the inside. He wasn't saying, I'm talking to Enrique Tarrio, but he was saying, here's what my source is saying, here's what my source is saying. And that was valuable information to the DC police, because that could, of course, have people in position to be able to keep groups separated. It's the same thing that we've seen when we've seen these other groups like Patriot Front marching through DC just a few days ago. Where MPD officers are sort of keeping them separated and trying to reduce conflict. So, there is a reason for some of these officers to be in contact with some of these extremist groups, but you've got to really navigate those relationships really, really carefully. And obviously, you shouldn't have somebody who's sympathetic to extremist groups in those important roles.
Any reason to believe there are more inside Metro PD, or no?
I think the bigger thing is with the FBI, and we saw that this week in terms of people who are sympathetic to people who stormed the Capitol on January 6th, and that's something that the top officials at the FBI were warned about in the immediate aftermath.
Ryan Riley, who has been covering a lot of this January 6th related reporting for us. Ryan, thank you.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.